last but not least, right, we come to presenting information. And you know what? I thought in order to begin this, I'm going to sort of take you on a reverse journey. What is this? Well, this is most of the slides that we've already covered in the process of today. And what I would like to draw your attention to at this point is the fact that the slides are the result of something that began with something like this. Okay, so, you know, at the beginning was the word, right? And the word was autorzy nowej podstawy programowej. In other words, what we could have done, but I hope we didn't, what we could have done is take this solid piece of text and relate to you this text more or less verbatim, right? But of course we haven't. And even though this text is already some sort of regurgitation of the original nowa podstawa programowa, I think it sort of stands to reason that any attempt to simply deliver this information in its original format would not quite do the job. Do you agree? So what is it that we have actually done? Well, in order to arrive at 150 slides out of a solid block of text, we have performed a certain number of operations on the original text, which all are part and parcel of presenting information effectively. Of course, I say effectively, hoping that you agree that this is an effective way to do it. And of course, you are the ultimate judges of that. But what I am trying to show you is that whether we have ultimately been successful or not, we have tried our very best to do what? Well, first and foremost, can you help me? To draw certain conclusions from the original text. Next, we certainly needed to read between the lines. We also needed, and a lot, to distinguish the real hard facts from, well, and other sorts of things that were either said directly or not, and that's bullet number 2. Needless to add, there's a significant amount of, and you know what I'm driving at, we also, if this is successful, then we have also needed to work out some sort of sequence with this information. And that's what the original 5 sessions have been about, haven't they? And now I hope you realize that the reason why I am number 6 is because, despite what Carolina said, this is the most complex skill. No, I'm kidding. Now, all of these are important, and I'm very happy to say that when I started flipping through the pages of the 2 courses that are the original inspiration behind the event today, I found, amongst others, a very good way of thinking about what it really takes to present information. This is what Monica calls integrating skills in all of those sections in Checkpoint, where she always takes this as a final integrating skill behind all of the other things, and by this I mean taking all the linguistic input, all the information presented in the unit, all the skills that are micro skills that I just showed you on the preceding slide, and arriving with luck at something which will be effective, interesting, and engaging to the audience. Speaking of which, I have a little eye test for you to perform. Take a look. I wonder if you can read this. What does it say? Knowledge made, isn't it? But you know what? This is actually the wrong way around if you want an effective presentation. Why? Because an effective presentation really isn't primarily about knowledge. What is it primarily about? You see? Okay, so it doesn't matter what knowledge I have got, or it does not matter the most, I should say, what knowledge you have got. What matters the most is whether I am able to effectively communicate this knowledge to you. Does it make sense? All right. Well, of course, the question, as always, is how. And this gentleman, whom I hope you've recognized, was no doubt a master of doing that effectively. Do you agree? Well, I should add a little proviso here, which is that the late or the later Steve Jobs, he's now both, sadly. No, but what I'm trying to say is that when you watch his original presentations, when he started with Apple, they weren't as wonderful as the ones which he became so famous for. In other words, it's again, even his own history as a presenter is a history of arriving at a certain way to communicate information really effectively. And there could be many different ways of saying what it is that was this magic formula, but to me, after years and years of trying to present information myself and coaching other people to do that, I think this really is the key word. What he became a master of is the master of giving people a reason to listen. And how do you give people a reason to listen? Well, instead of just telling them what you know, you pick on one key thing which they really want to hear. Does it make sense to you? Can I show you how it can be done behind classroom doors? Take a wonderful example, one of those integrating the skills sections from Checkpoint, which, as you've already seen, they always culminate with an invitation for students to arrive at the presentation. A typical task will be something like this. For the next class, prepare a short presentation with a partner on how, in this case, on how Polish and British teenagers aged 14 to 16 spend their free time. Now, you can probably imagine what a typical student will go through here. There will be, of course, certain tips in the book for how this can be done effectively. What I want to show you, however, is something which you can do to help the student really make this presentation jobs-like. Would you like to see? What you need to get the student to understand is that there is a crucial difference, fundamental difference, between the topic of this presentation, which is, again, what? Do a presentation on how Polish and British teenagers aged 14 to 16 spend their life. And notice, the question is, do you really want to hear about how British and Polish teenagers aged 14 to 16 spend their lives, honestly? Yeah, Marta does, but Marta's crazy, so she doesn't count. What I'm trying to say is that there is a topic and there is an aim, or there is a goal, or there is a message. And this is what Jobs was a master of. He always thought through the reason why the audience would listen to it. What does this mean in this context? Well, let me show you, for instance, a reason that perhaps another student might want to listen about teenagers spending time in Poland and in Britain. What if this was the real message of this presentation? How does it end, do you think? 2/3 of British teens spend their free time in, where do you think? I'm already hearing certain suggestions, and I'm very happy. Now I'm going to show you. Has it got significantly more interesting now? Notice it still addresses that topic. That's what I'm trying to show you. There's a big difference between just doing the topic and coming up with a message which will be genuinely engaging to the audience. Is this teachable? Of course it is. I would not be wasting my breath if it weren't, okay? So how could we teach this with the students? Well, let's take that very same presentation again, okay? And let's first give them a few alternative examples so that they can see that this is doable. Such as what? Angielskie nastolatki mają znacznie gorzej niż polskie. Does it still address the main topic? Well, it does. But now I've given them a reason to listen, yes? Okay. Another alternative to show them that it's completely doable. If they run out of ideas, that's what they should be searching for on the internet, which, by the way, Monica encourages in all of these tasks, except, I would argue, it's nice to give them a reason to do that. Another example from me. In the UK, chłopaki robią to samo, co w Polsce, za to dziewczyny. Now, I'm not telling you whether it's true or not. I'm just showing you that I'm giving the listener a reason to listen. Does it make sense? Okay, and you know what happens at point 3? At point 3, I stop giving them examples because I've given them enough, I think. So point 3 is where I tell them, okay, your idea. Okay, so now either work individually or work in pairs or work in a small group and try and take on that very same topic and come up with at least one more enticing reason for another person to listen to you. Does it make sense? I hope you see that this is not only, or perhaps even not primarily, something that they need in order to actually get a 5 from you. This is important when they want to take this as a skill and use it in life, when they want to pitch their idea, when they want to present their research results, when they want to get a grant and they want to win over other candidates, you see. So it's a genuine life skill. But lesson number 1 for that skill is you need to engage, because if they do not start listening to you, chances are they will not continue doing so. Does it make sense? Do you think it's teachable? It would be. But, you know, it takes a wonderful teacher to spot that crucial difference and to exploit that potential. Okay? It's sitting there for you to be used. Speaking of engaging students or engaging other people, really, I think lesson number 2, based on that, is perhaps inspired by this, which is a modern way of saying, you know what? Yeah? What is the original expression, the original saying? That a picture, right, is worth 1,000 words. So this is the modern way. Now, whether it's electronic or digital, whether it's not, I think the point remains. And what is the second point, the second lesson I would like you to take away here when it comes to presenting information effectively? Well, information these days clearly isn't or is no longer purely textual, or perhaps not even primarily textual. So, in order for students to devise effective presentation and deliver them effectively, they have to learn to exploit visuals. Absolutely fundamental, okay? How can we teach that? Again, let's take a real example, shall we? Imagine a topic that goes, the role of new technologies in modern communication. It's not a target, not an aim, it's just a topic. But before I even turn this into one of those, you know, Steve Jobs-like reasons for people to listen, imagine that I first of all want to illustrate the point I want to make with a photo, a picture, okay? Where do I find these pictures? Well, initially, you will find these good pictures in a good book, like Marta's in this case. In Password Reset, I found those 2 photographs in one unit devoted to presentation giving, and I think the task that accompanies this particular set of photographs is lovely. The task says, very simply, given that topic, which of the 2 photographs do you say answers or addresses the topic better? The role of new technologies in modern communication. Which of these 2 deals with the topic better? The author is saying justify, well, and she's, you know, killing my point, but never you mind, okay? Because you're already doing that activity, and I'm very happy, because notice, of course, it can be one or the other, or even both, depending on what it is that you really want to say. Does it make sense? So, what you are training students here is, okay, you want a visual that will carry your message the best, okay? That message, as I say, can come from the help of a material, of a visual taken directly from a good course book. It can come from somewhere else. I'll give you an example in a moment. But notice that this is the beginning of a structure. What kind of structure? Well, once you know which one, then perhaps, Marta said justify, but not just justify the choice of one, but equally importantly, justify the rejection of the other. In other words, get your head around what is it that you're really trying to say about modern communication. Is modern communication about people doing things? Or is it about people having fun and interacting with others? Or is it both? Or is it either? You see, have something interesting to say and then illustrate it with a picture. Speaking of illustrating with a picture, this is also a great way to tell the students, if you are so inclined, again, do an internet search and find something which perhaps illustrates your point even better. But first, you need to have that point, then you choose the visual that will support that point. Am I making sense again? Do you see how this is completely teachable? You start with something which is already prepared for you, and then gradually you take students to be more and more autonomous and independent. But they need to learn the power of visualization. And that's my lesson number 2. Okay? Lesson number 3, in a sense, is a direct consequence of lesson number 1 and lesson number 2. I should have said, perhaps, that the difference between the way that presentations are treated in the 2 courses is that Monica calls them integrating skills, and Marta, fascinatingly, typically includes them in the sections that develop speaking step by step. And of course, it's a wonderful way of sort of summarizing what I am to say here in my lesson 3. Because of course, on the one hand, you really need to integrate everything in order for the presentation to be maximally communicative, but clearly, without delivering it in speech, it will never happen to the full. So what I'm trying to show you is that looking at the sort of double barrel approach is a fantastic way of getting the key thing about presenting with the students. And speaking of building this as a skill, one of the things that Checkpoint and Password are both very good at is persuading the learner that, of course, giving a presentation in a sense of actually speaking, delivering it, is a matter of organizing not just the facts, information, but also the language which needs to happen along the way. And in this particular lesson, Marta is saying, look, as a learner, you really deserve to have a lot of support in how you organize all of this language that's needed for choosing a picture, giving the reason, rejecting a picture, giving a reason. If you are able to do that, your presentation is already taking shape. And you know what? The language is also sitting there for you to be exploited. Because again, it's a process. No one expects them to be able to just, deliver it straight away. It really needs to be built step by step. And this is an example from an earlier part of the course where they are still relatively reliant on information and on support coming from a wonderful piece of teaching material. And to finish off, I want to say that, that this building a complex skill like presenting step by step is clearly a fantastic illustration of this quote from Douglas Biber. The quote is already 30 years old, isn't it? But it feels very fresh, doesn't it? This idea of, how do you persuade the learner that there is still something to learn? Well, get them to do something that they are not familiar with. It's a lovely thing for any kind of teaching, but certainly true of presentation giving. And in this particular case, you might say, but the fact, for instance, that there is a presentation after each unit of Checkpoint might mean that after a while, the genre will become familiar. So they will say, well, I know how to do it. I just say, to begin with this and to continue that and in conclusion something. And to shake the learner out of this false sense of security, I suggest we can do something else that I would really like to recommend for my final lesson. And it is, okay, once they've become relatively comfortable with the basic presentation format, there is no reason why we could not give them something just a touch more challenging. And this is my final tip for you today. What is this something? Well, this is something which I became a great fan of several years ago. The idea isn't mine. The idea originally comes from the world of architecture, where this presentation format, the name is very weird. Various pronunciations circulate, Pechakucha, Pehakucha, Petrachka, yes, and various others. But what is special about this presentation format is how constricted it is. The idea originally came from the world of architecture, where, those poor people that had to listen through endless pitches given by, one architectural firm after another, finally came up with this idea of, okay, well, this just can't go on like this, okay? It has to be democratic, and it has to be very, very rigid. So what they came up with is the format where everybody only had 20 slides, strictly 20 slides, and each of these slides critically rotated after 20 seconds without the speaker's control. Okay? So, you set in PowerPoint, for instance, you set the timer on automatic what's the word, on rotation after 20 seconds, and it auto runs. So everybody only gets 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and then they need to sit down. How does that sound? Yeah, it sounds great, it sounds scary, it sounds all of these things. It's certainly something which, unless you've tried it, really is something which you might say is almost impossible to do, because notice you have to time your script perfectly so that you only have 20 seconds of it every time. Okay? Now, this idea got adopted by the world of ELT by somebody called Lindsay Clanfield about 10 years ago, and for several years there were very effective Pecha-Kucha or Petrachka nights at IATEFL conferences, including in Poland, where people took on that challenge. Now, the challenge is great because, you know, as you can easily realize, the most important moment is when you run out of text and the slide doesn't rotate. Or when you have too much text and the slide rotates too quickly. Now, to show you that this is completely accessible given training to a learner, I thought I would give you a sample of a real learner actually attacking that challenge. Would you like to see?
I'm going to talk about dance. What is dance about? It actually depends on a person. Probably for some people it is not anything special or important, just entertainment or something interesting to watch from time to time. But for me it is a way to express myself, a kind of a self-development, exercising my body, staying fit. What is more, it is also something which distracts me from school and from notorious tests.
Did you notice?
It is also something that I can base my future on. For me, dance is a more efficient way of communication among people than talking. Of course, not in case we want to say something casual. For example, make me a sandwich or take me to school.
Now she wants it to move and it doesn't, you see?
Whatever. Okay. Dancing, especially ballet, is a hard body exercise. Although dancers look like it is pleasant and easy for them to lift their legs and stay still in different positions, it is actually a huge physical effort. All dancers have bigger muscles than tennis players or footballers.
And so on. Okay? Now you can see, I hope you saw those two critical moments. One was when she obviously ran out of time, right? And the other, equally interesting, is when she keeps on going and the slide's not moving. Hello, move. Okay, you really appreciate the power of a second. You honestly do. Now, you might say, well, this is a lot of work. Well, it is. So what I would like to suggest to you as a way to approach this step by step is a mini Pecha-Kucha. How could that work? Well, you give them, for instance, 8 slides each to design. They each still last 20 seconds, which means that everybody has got 2 minutes and 40 seconds exactly. Why am I showing you this? Because this also means that it's completely doable in terms of presenting it in the classroom without losing the momentum. Now, the hard work of writing up the script, trying it out, seeing if it fits, well, that's all the skills that we talked about, particularly summarizing, of course, which shows that perhaps Session 5 was well timed before Session 6. Now, speaking of timing, I am running out of time, but I want to say that with this mini Pecha-Kucha especially, I hope you can see that the whole point of delivering it successfully is rehearsing it. Okay, and I'm giving them a very obvious reason to rehearse. But they rehearse not because I wanted them to, they rehearse because if they so do, they will inevitably process this language over and over. If they decide, for instance, that they have got too much text, they have to do something with the text, you see. If they have too little text, they have to add a little in order to fit whatever the amount of time you give them. Okay? Now, this is almost it, but being a boring teacher, I need to check whether you've been listening. So my lesson number 3 was rehearse, and everybody remembers because it's short-term memory. What was lesson 2 about? Okay, visualization, and lesson number 1 was about engagement. Okay, so if you can get these 3, you are certainly moving towards more effective presentations with your learners. I only had 20 minutes, and like Marta, I hate 20-minute slots. But I've done something else, and I would like to present this to you here. I've done a 5-episode mini-series on how to power your point, therefore deliver effective presentations for secondary learners, not for teachers, for secondary learners. And the course is already available, or will be very shortly, on Macmillan service for all our wonderful customers, people who will be using our 2 wonderful courses. So if you would like more on this, this is where you'll find it. And that's all from me. So thank you very much for being such a Thank you for being such a lovely audience, even though I could hardly see anybody else, but that's, it's a running joke here. Now, time has come to summarize, and I hope that in the process of today, we have persuaded you with all the wonderful examples that we have offered, all 6 of us, we have offered from the 2 courses, that indeed it is these 2 that do this job very, very well and very, very systematically. As I said at the beginning, don't trust us. Facts from opinion, right? Check for yourselves. You have got a ready-made checklist which you are more than welcome to use and flip through the pages of the 2 courses to decide which one is more to your liking. You can also check it with any other course, and you will see that Checkpoint and Password Reset really do a fantastic job compared to anybody else out there. It's also my pleasure at the end to say that the 6 sessions that you have just experienced are not going away because of all the fantastic streaming technology. So very shortly there will be available as 6 separate video installments for you to enjoy, and I'm sure we will post them on our roadmap to Matura 2023 service, and you are more than welcome to go back and re-watch them, maybe take further notes if needed. We realized that this was very, very fast moving, but we also hope that this made it quite energetic, and as such we were able to fit in quite a lot of information for you in one day. To say goodbye, I just want to sort of rephrase, or perhaps I should say paraphrase, some of the things that have been said today. We started out by me asserting that this conference really is about how you process information. Remember? Linguistic, communicative, textual, factual, etc. And if you do this right, maybe you will be helping your learners not only succeed in the exam, which of course is important, but ultimately, education isn't about exams, is it? It's about something else. So perhaps you will simply help them be more responsible citizens, better consumers of information, better readers. In other words, you will move them from only processing information superficially to something which could be described as actually getting knowledge out of this. And if you can, I think your mission as a fantastic language teacher will be even more profound than it otherwise would be, with or without Matura 2023. And to add a slightly more light-hearted note to finish off, I also add one more picture here, since I preach visualization, and I want to say that there is always an element of creativity, novelty, fun, which is where wonderful teaching always relies in. So I hope that with the ideas that we've given you today, we've also provided you with a little bit of inspiration for the coming months, and that you will be able to make your lessons even more exciting as a result. And this is the moment where I would just like to say, on behalf of all of us today, thank you very much indeed. And good luck with your teaching and learning. Good luck from Macmillan, of course, and we hope to see you again very soon.